Candace Owens has been watching all of this and analyzing what it means for a long time. She's host of the Candace Owens podcast. We're happy to have her. Candace, these videos are getting more and more extreme. They're not performances, they're real. It's Americans who are being targeted and suffering and killed. Why is no one saying anything about this?
Well, first and foremost, Tucker, you mentioned Kim Foxx in Chicago, and I just want to say what you forgot to mention is the fact that she's both black and a female. And also the mayor of Chicago is black and a female. So I just want to introduce that because, you know, diversity and equity and inclusion and fluffy words that are supposed to make you feel good, even though they're doing bad before they introduce the bait and the switch. It's infuriating to watch your monologue. It's infuriating to watch the monologue, look at all of the crime, look at the statistics, and look at the laws behind it. Because you know what it makes me think? You know what it makes the American people think? The criminals are on the streets, but the worst criminals are in office. They're voting on pieces of legislation.
Totally
They're pushing through pieces of policies that are harming the American people, and they know it's harming the American people. The thing is, they just don't care because they have armed guards, because they live behind gated communities, because they've sold out the American people. We all knew this was going to come. We voted these people into office, by the way. These are elected officials that stood on a platform and told you to defund the police because they had armed guards. They didn't care. Of course, we're seeing this consequence. We all saw it coming. You spoke about it. I spoke about it. We were saying it ad nauseum. Guys, please be aware that the Black Lives Matter narrative is a complete and utter lie. And by the way, who is being harmed the most? It's everybody. It doesn't matter what your race is or your ethnicity or your gender. But who's being harmed the absolute most when you look at the numbers? Of course, it's black Americans, the very people that they purported to help when they at first pushed out these policies. Oh, don't worry. It's going to be great. Don't worry about it. We're going to defund the police. Like I said, it's infuriating. And I do want to say this to people that are watching, are still living in these inner communities in Democrat cities. Get out. This is not a joke. Don't wait for it to be you. Don't wait for it to be your child that you're pushing in a stroller when you get run over. Don't wait for it to be you that's going for a jog down the street and you're grabbed into a van and killed and you have 2 kids and you're my age, like what happened to Eliza Fletcher in Memphis. Do not wait for politicians to rescue you. Rescue yourself and get out of these Democrat-controlled cities.
I think that's really good advice. Candace Owens, I appreciate your coming on tonight. Thank you. Subscribe to the Fox News YouTube channel to catch our nightly opens, stories that are changing the world and changing your life. From Tucker Carlson Tonight.
The major news from Ukraine tonight, troops driving Russian forces further back, and the new images coming in showing Ukrainian forces rolling into formerly occupied villages and towns there. And, of course, the joy on the faces of the Ukrainians waiting to hug those Ukrainian soldiers. Tonight, what the Pentagon is now saying about whether the U.S. helped with strategy at all, with intelligence behind this counteroffensive. ABC's Tom Soufi-Burridge in Ukraine tonight.
Tonight, new video showing Ukrainian soldiers rolling into recently liberated towns. Crowds leaving their homes and waving them in. One man on his knees. In these images being shared online, Ukraine's stunning offensive in the east, freeing 150,000 people from Russian rule in just days, according to officials. And scenes of desperation in nearby Balaklia after months of Russian occupation. Residents today lining up for food. This woman breaking down, describing the horrors she witnessed, saying she cried when she saw Ukrainian soldiers. Authorities digging up bodies, launching hundreds of war crimes investigations every day. Here, police revealing a torture chamber inside a local police station where dozens were held. And as officials share videos they say show captive Russian soldiers, the White House tonight saying there is certainly a shift in momentum in the war.
We have seen Russians evacuate, withdraw, retreat from their defensive positions, particularly there in and around the Kharkiv Oblast. They have left fighting positions, they've left supplies.
The Pentagon confirming many Russian soldiers fled back over the border.
We've seen a number of Russian forces, especially in the Northeast, in the Kharkiv region, cross over the border back into Russia.
A U.S. official tonight revealing new details on how Ukraine pulled off this sudden assault, saying it was conducted by a relatively small Ukrainian force. The U.S. helping Ukraine plan the operation over the summer, conducting joint war game scenarios and providing vital analysis and intelligence.
The Russians got sucker punched. The Ukrainians talked for a month about how they were going to start a big offensive in the south. The Russians moved troops out of the north, and as soon as the Ukrainians saw the weak lines, they counterattacked in the north with that left hook.
We met this Ukrainian soldier, codenamed Jackson, just back from the Donbass battlefield, where he filmed US-supplied HIMARS rockets striking the enemy. He says US satellite reconnaissance is allowing the Ukrainians to pinpoint the Russian military. Then the HIMARS do the rest.
This is all fascinating. The Ukrainians signaling they were going to take a move in the south and then at the same time heading to the east, and we've seen what's happened. Let's bring in Tom from Kyiv tonight. And Tom, what's the Pentagon now saying about whether the U.S. helped at all with this strategy, the intelligence behind this counteroffensive?
Yeah, David, an official saying the U.S. does engage with the Ukrainians at a variety of levels on the military side, providing them with time-sensitive information to enable the Ukrainians to conduct operations and defend their homeland. David?
Tom Sufi Burridge in Kyiv. Tom, thank you again tonight.
Now to that breaking news from overnight, a package exploding at Northeastern University, sending a 45-year-old staff member to the hospital. Aaron Katursky is tracking the very latest on the investigation now. Aaron, good morning.
Good morning to you. This was just terrifying. It caused evacuations on the campus of Northeastern University and prompted searches at other colleges and universities in and around Boston, but authorities do not believe this was random. A manager at Northeastern's virtual reality lab opened the package, and they found a note that railed against virtual reality. It also mentioned Facebook and its founder, Mark Zuckerberg. Sources told ABC News that the hard plastic case contained no actual explosive materials. Instead, it appears it had been pressurized, and when opened, it depressurized, causing the detonation. The lab manager suffered minor injuries to his forearms, but otherwise, Northeastern says the scene is secure. Classes will be held today. But, George, the authorities still have no suspects.
Okay, so the search is on. Okay, Aaron, thanks very much.
Meantime, a Russian businessman has now become at least the 9th prominent executive to die under mysterious circumstances in less than a year. And CNN's Tom Foreman is here now to walk us through this string of suspicious deaths. Tom, who is this latest businessman to die?
Suspicious is the right word. In this case, it is Ivan Pechorin, managing director of the Corporation for the Development of the Far East and the Arctic. On September 10th, regional media reported that he was found drowned. There were some reports about possible boating accident, but there is mystery around this and suspicion. He is not a member of either Gazprom or Lukoil, two big companies out there. They're notable because 6 of the 9 who have died in these suspicious circumstances were associated with these two very large energy companies. Anna?
And so why would employees of these energy companies be potentially targeted?
Well, because these energy companies spoke up early about problems with the invasion of Ukraine. Notably, Lukoil put out this statement in March. We express our sincere empathy for all the victims who are affected by this tragedy. We strongly support a lasting ceasefire and a settlement of problems through serious negotiations and diplomacy. This absolutely did not make the Kremlin happy. So people start looking at this and saying, well, what came next? Well, 2 months later, Alexander Subotin was dead after visiting a shaman for some possible treatment of some kind of issues, but he was found dead. September 1st, Ravel Maganov dies after reportedly falling from a hospital window. In both cases, there were some official accounts, particularly in this case, of saying, well, he was dealing with some kind of issues, maybe depression after a heart attack. But when you go beyond this and you put it into the big picture, it gets confusing. 6 of the 9 of these people in suspicious deaths tied to those companies. But look at this. Suspected suicide, reported stabbing, suspected suicide, reported stabbing, murder-suicide, falling from window. All of these taken together have really raised interest among people saying, is this the machination of the Kremlin? Now, notably, we do not know that. And in the current circumstance, there is a tremendous amount of business pressure over there as well, on top of which there could be elements within the business community that might have complaints with all of this. But it remains suspicious, and a lot of questions in all of these remain unanswered, especially that they're all happening now.
3 Iranian nationals are charged with hacking into hundreds of computers here in the U.S. and around the world. The Justice Department says they stole data and demanded payment in exchange. That scheme targeted various organizations, including a domestic violence shelter. NBC News correspondent Corey Coffin joins us now with more on this. So, Corey, walk us through what we know about these hackers and the victims they targeted.
Yeah, Aaron, justice officials say the scheme targeted hundreds of corporate and government victims around the world. The Department of Justice today unsealing the August indictment of 3 Iranian nationals who officials say are behind the international ransomware conspiracy. Now, these hackers allegedly carried out the scheme for their own personal gain, not at the behest of the Iranian government. They allegedly defrauded a broad spectrum of organizations, including electric power utilities in Mississippi and Indiana, a public housing authority in Washington state, and even a domestic violence shelter in Pennsylvania. FBI Director Chris Wray released a video statement on the charges today. Here's more of what he had to say.
Today's announcement is just the tip of the iceberg. If you try to disrupt the way Americans live their daily lives, you're going to be facing the full force of the U.S. government and its allies, and we will do everything in our power to bring you to justice.
Now, DOJ officials said they believe the number of victims in the U.S. alone reached well into the hundreds, Aaron.
So, Corey, what do we know about where these 3 hackers are at this point?
That's the rub. Right now, they're believed to be in Iran, and according to Justice Department officials, the chances of them being extradited to the U.S. are slim unless they travel to a country that has an agreement with the United States regarding extradition. Aaron.
The FBI will be watching for sure. Corey Coffin with us today. Thank you, Corey.